but this is the way that you can go ahead and fix it. So you guys have a very simple graph right here. It says power saving GPU is for Intel, and then high performance GPU is NVIDIA. So again, it's trying to pull from NVIDIA. You shouldn't really be doing that. You should be using the Intel processor to capture your actual screen. So we're going to go ahead and use power saving, which will give us Intel UHD graphics, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to go ahead and switch this over to power saving and then press save. That's pretty much it. You're going to leave this exactly the way that it is. Just go ahead and close everything else down here. And we're also going to close OBS. Now, the next time that you open OBS, everything should be working just the way it is. You guys can see everything is working. We've got OBS here. Again, I'm using XSplit to make this video possible. So XSplit, you are awesome as well. We're also using Audacity to go ahead and record our voice. So you guys can see everything is showing up on our screen here. And that's the way that you go ahead and fix your black screen errors whenever you're trying to capture your display capture in OBS. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it wasn't too confusing, the fact that we're making an OBS video even though there's an XSplit watermark on the bottom right. I hope you guys I hope it worked for you guys. So if it did, let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this or any of our other tutorials or videos, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And I will see you guys on the next video.
We all gotta shoot the tank. You hear me?
Hi everyone, Kevin here. Today I want to show you how you can both get and also use OBS. First off, what is OBS? It's an extremely powerful and also versatile screen recorder, and you could use it to stream to services like Twitch, YouTube, and also Facebook. In fact, I use it to record all of my videos on this channel. Best of all, it's entirely free and it's also open source. Alright, let's jump on the computer, and first off, let's see how we can get OBS. Here I am on my PC, and first off, I want to show you how you can get OBS. Once again, it is entirely free. To get OBS, head to the website obsproject.com. I've also included a link in the description. You can simply click on that to navigate to this website. The great thing about OBS is it works across all the major platforms, including Windows, Mac, and also Linux. To download OBS, simply click on the operating system that you're using and then run through the installation process. Once you finish downloading and installing OBS, go ahead and launch the app. That'll drop you on a screen that looks like this. For those of you who are wondering, well, how am I recording this video today? Well, of course, I'm using OBS. I'm using OBS to record OBS. You can launch multiple instances of the app. It's kind of like the movie Inception. Now, right now, we simply have a black screen. How do we get started? By far, the easiest way to get going with OBS is to go up to the top menus, click on Tools, and then let's click on the Auto Configuration Wizard. This opens up the Auto Configuration Wizard, and here we have a choice to make. You need to decide what exactly you want to use OBS for. You can use it for streaming, for screen recording, or you could use it as a virtual camera. With the streaming option, if you select this, it's going to go through and have you select the service provider. So whether you're using Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and then it'll also help you identify the best bitrate. With screen recording, well, just like the name implies, you'll be able to record your screen and then you'll have a video file on your computer that you can go and edit, or you could send it to others. Lastly, there's another option for using a virtual camera. What is a virtual camera? Well, in a moment, we're going to compose a scene using OBS. With a virtual camera, you can send that scene to different video conferencing software, whether it's Microsoft Teams, Zoom, or Google Meet, or any other services. You can use a virtual camera. For this tutorial today, I'm going to optimize for recording, but just keep in mind what you see today, you can use it for streaming, and you could also use it for a virtual camera. Once you make your selection, let's click on Next. Next, we have a few more questions that we need to answer. First, we need to indicate what our base resolution is, and I would select the option that matches the resolution of your display. When you click on this drop-down list, here I see display 1, I only have one monitor, and my resolution is 2560 by 1440. I'll select this option. Next, there's a question about the frames per second that we would like to use, and we have several different options here. We could go with 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second, or we could do either one but prefer either higher frames or lower frames. In general, if you're going to be recording, say, gameplay, you probably want to go with a higher frame rate. That makes it look a little bit smoother. If you're going to be recording things like your desktop or an application, you probably want to go with 30 frames per second and you'll have a little bit better resolution. So I'm going to select 30 frames per second now, but feel free to choose the value that matches what you're planning on recording. Once we make all of our selections, let's now click on Next. On the next screen, we'll see the final results of the auto configuration wizard, and this shows us the various settings that it's going to put in place for our recording. And all of this looks good, so next, let's click on Apply Settings. If you want to go back and make any modifications to the settings, you can always click on Tools again, and you could run through the auto configuration wizard. Once again, this is by far the easiest way to get started. Alternatively, if you want to tweak the various settings, you can click on the File menu, click on Settings. Within Settings, click on Output, and then you can customize your streaming and your recording settings. If you want full control, you could also click on Output Mode and then click on Advanced, and you have full control over the settings of your streaming and your recording. Once again, using the auto configuration wizard is by far the easiest way to get going. Now that we've gone through the auto configuration wizard and all of our settings are in place, next we need to tell OBS what we want to record or what we want to stream. And to do that, we're going to use this real estate right here. This black rectangle area, this is referred to as the scene, and we are going to add different sources to the scene. Down in the bottom left hand corner, you can see that this scene is called Scene, and we'll leave this name for now. However, you can also add additional scenes, you can also remove scenes, and later on we'll do that. Especially once you start getting multiple scenes, it's a good idea to rename them. First though, I want to simply get started using OBS, so let's now focus on sources and let's start adding a few simple sources. You might be wondering, what is a source? Well, let's click on the plus icon to see what types of items we can add to our scene. Here we see a list of all the different types of sources that we can add. Now, two of the ones that you'll probably most likely want to use, one of them is called display capture. What this means is, well, this is basically capturing your display or your desktop. If you're going to be playing a game, you'll likely want to click on Game Capture instead. This is optimized for gaming. For now though, let's click on Display Capture to simply capture our desktop. This opens up a prompt where we can give it a name. I'll simply leave it set to Display Capture. Once again, if you start adding many different sources, it helps to give it a unique name so you could identify it later on. Let's now click on OK. This opens up properties, and here I can now see my display. Down below, let's say I had multiple monitors, I can choose which display I want to focus on. I could also select whether to include my mouse cursor. Everything looks good, so I'm going to click on OK. Back on the main screen, you should see your scene start coming together. We now have the display showing up here. As a very quick aside, if you're using a laptop and you have a black screen after adding a display, go down to Windows and search for Graphic Settings, then click into Graphic Settings. Here, select Desktop App and then click on Browse. Navigate to where OBS is on your computer. Here's the typical location where you'll find it. Next, click on the OBS 64EXE. Once you add it, you should see a new option appear within Graphic Settings. Click on Options and you can toggle between power saving or high performance. Once you change the selection, try restarting OBS to see if your display shows up. We now have our desktop appearing here. If you're recording or streaming and you would like to include audio, we also need to add a source for your microphone or for your system audio. Let's click once again under Sources on the plus icon, and at the very top of this list, there's the option for audio input capture. Let's click on this. For this one, I want this to be my microphone, so I'm going to rename it to microphone. Next, let's click on OK. On the properties screen, I can choose the device, and I'm going to select my microphone. Next, let's click on OK. I can now see my microphone in the audio mixer, and it is working. Here I can see that the audio is coming through. If I also want to record my system sound, I also need to add another source for that. Let's go down once again to the plus icon, and this time let's go up to the audio output capture. For this, I'm going to rename it System Sound. Next, let's click on OK. Within properties, I can choose the device that I want to capture the sound from, and I'm going to select speakers or headphones and then click on OK. Now that I've added system sound, I can see both my microphone and the system sound. Now that I've added a few different sources, you could start to see the importance of making sure you give the source an easy to understand name. Especially when you start getting many different items showing up in this list, you want to know what the different items are. Next, let's focus our attention over on the audio mixer. Here, once again, we can see all of the different audio sources. You can also drag here to adjust the levels. You can also mute or unmute the source, and you have some advanced audio properties here. To the right of the audio mixer, you also have scene transitions, and later on, once we add another scene, we'll come back to what you can do with this. But before we do that, let's start recording something so we can just see how OBS even works. Over on the right-hand side, we have a variety of different controls. At this point, we can start streaming to our favorite streaming service. We could also kick off a recording, and in a moment we'll do this. We could also start our virtual camera, and there's something called studio mode. We'll come back to this a little later to see what you can do with this. Also, you can jump into settings or exit the application. For now though, let's simply kick off a basic recording. I've now started my recording, and you can see I'm now recording my screen. So all of this will be captured. While I'm recording, I can also click on this icon to the right of stop recording, and that'll pause my recording. Once I'm ready to record again, I can unpause, and that'll once again resume the recording. Once I'm all done, I can click on stop recording. Congratulations, we have finished our first recording. If you want to watch your recording, go up to the file menu up on top and then click on the option that says show recordings. This will open up File Explorer, and here I can see a recording. Let's click on this to see how it turned out. I've now started my recording, and you can see I'm now recording Now that recording looks great. The one thing you'll notice though is this is an MKV file. And an MKV file, you typically can't open that in editing software, and it's not as easy to share with others. To be able to work with this file, go up to the File menu and then click on Remux Recordings. You can click on the ellipses over here and then select the file that we just recorded. You can then click on Open, and then once you're ready to remux, click on this button that says Remux. The recording has been remuxed. Let's click on OK and then close this window. If we go back to Show Recordings in the File menu, you'll now see that we have an MP4 file. You can very easily work with this in whatever editing software that you want. Now you might be wondering, what if I just want to record directly to an MP4? That's kind of a pain to record something and then to have to go to Remux. To be able to change the default, you can go up to the File menu, then click on Settings, and then let's click on Output. Within Output, under the recording category, you can change the default recording format. And here, look, you could change it to MP4. Of course, there's a reason why OBS sets MKV as the default. Let's say that maybe you're recording a 2-hour lecture. With MP4, if let's say halfway through the lecture, your computer crashes, well, you're going to lose every single thing that you recorded up to that point. With MKV, on the other hand, if your computer crashed, let's say halfway through this lecture, everything up to the point of the crash would still be saved. So in a sense, you can think of MKV as an insurance policy. Sure, it takes an extra step where you have to go to File and Remux, but that way you have a little bit extra security. Now, of course, if you're recording something short, maybe it's just a minute or two, feel free to go with MP4 because the risk of having a failure is probably pretty low. So whichever one you prefer, feel free to set that here. I'm going to leave mine on MKV. One of the things that you might have noticed in the screen recording is at the very beginning of the screen recording, I click on Start Recording and then I can minimize OBS. At the very end of the recording, I would have to open OBS again and then click on stop recording. If I don't want to show OBS at all, well, I could use editing software to cut out the beginning and the end, or alternatively, I can use OBS to set shortcut keys to both start and stop the recording. To set a shortcut key within OBS, go up to the File menu and then let's click on Settings. Within Settings, over on the left-hand side, click on Hotkeys. Within Hotkeys, you can set a shortcut key to start the recording and to stop the recording. Here, for example, I'll press Alt F2 to start, and then I could also press Alt F2 to stop. So this way I could toggle that key combination to both start and then to stop the recording. You could also set shortcut keys for pretty much any action that you could take in OBS. Here too, you could pause or unpause the recording, and there are many others. Now that you know the basics of how to use OBS to capture your display, next I want to show you some of the more advanced uses of OBS. And now I want to show you how you can build a more complex scene. I want to use the scene that we just created as the base. Let's right click on this scene and then let's click on duplicate. I'm going to call this scene desktop capture with webcam. Once you're done typing in the scene name, click on OK. I now have a second scene and I have all the same sources. I want to add a webcam, so let's click on the plus icon, and a webcam is a video capture device. Let's select this option. Next, I could give it a name. I'll stick with the default name of video capture device and then click on OK. This opens up my webcam properties and all the defaults look good. Next, I'll click on OK. My webcam image is now on the screen, but it is massive compared to the size of my desktop. To adjust this, down within sources, click on your video capture device and then you'll see a red rectangle appear around that source. Now I can click on the corner to adjust the size. If I want to modify the position, I can click on the item and then I can drag it on my screen. I'll continue adjusting the size just to make it smaller, and here once again by clicking on the item I can reposition it. Now I just want this to be a small rectangle in the bottom right hand corner of my screen, so I'll move it down there. That's looking a lot better now. Along with being able to simply reposition and also resize my webcam image, I can do the same for the desktop image that appears here. Just like before within the sources list, I'm going to click on display capture. Here I see a red rectangle appear around my display, and just like with the webcam image, I can reposition my desktop or I could adjust the size if I want. Now once again, this entire black area is what I'll be recording, so here in this case I want to record my desktop, so I'll leave it so it uses up the full space. With my webcam image, you'll notice that there's a lot of space on both sides of me, and that takes away from being able to see the desktop behind me. So I want to crop my image a little bit, and luckily that's pretty easy to do. Once again, I'll make sure that I select my video capture device, and then I see this red rectangle again that appears around the image. I can press the Alt key and then click on this red rectangle and I can drag it in, and that'll essentially crop the image. Here again, I'll do it on the other side and just tighten it up a little bit around my face. Now you see a little bit of a tighter image and you can see more of the desktop behind me. Now just like I cropped my video, I can crop any one of my sources. So even here with my desktop, let's say I only want to record a certain area of my screen, I can do that using cropping. Here I'll select the display capture, and just like I did with the video, I can click on this red border, press the Alt key, and then I can drag this in, and that'll only record this specific area of my screen. Now of course I want to record my whole screen, so I'll press the Alt key and then drag back out, and that'll re-add my entire screen. My scene is really starting to come together, but I do want to add a few more sources. Now I can click on the plus icon down below to add additional sources, or I could also drag and drop items directly into OBS. Here I have a logo sitting on my desktop. This is a PNG file. I can simply click on it and then drag it over onto my scene. Here now I see my logo file appears, and it's for the Kevin Cookie Company. Now just like with all the other items, I have this red rectangle around the item, and I could resize my logo. Now I want to position this right above my video image. Now I could click on my video and I could reposition this as well. So now that's looking pretty good. I have my logo and I have my video. I also want to include a border around my video. Right now it seems like it's just kind of hanging there over the background. To add a border, let's go down to sources and I'll click on the plus icon. For this, I want to add a color source. Let's click on that. I'll leave the default name and then click on OK. This opens up properties for color source. I'm going to move this over a little, and I want to use the same blue that appears in my logo. Here I could click on select color, and I want to pick a screen color. Let's click on that. Over here I can hover over my logo, and I'll take this blue color. Next, let's click on OK. So I now have this color source. Let's click on OK there, and now I see a rectangle with that color source. I'm going to adjust the size of this, and I'll put it right over my video. Now you'll see that the video sits in back of the color source. I want the color source to be a border for my video, so I want it in back of my video source. Down here within sources, I can see all the different sources within the scene. Now the item at the top is the topmost layer. The item at the bottom is the bottommost layer. Now I want my color source to appear behind my video capture device, so I'll simply click on this item and then drag and drop it behind the video device. I could also use these up and down arrows to shift the layers of the different items. So here now you see I have this color source behind my video capture device. Of course, the border is pretty thick right now, so when I have color source selected, I can reposition this, and just like I did before, I can use the Alt key to crop the size of this color source. So here I'll do it so it's a nice border around my video, and that looks pretty good now. Now as I'm working on my scene, I might want to make some sources visible and some sources not visible. So let's say I wanted to work on the desktop, and having my video here is somewhat distracting. I can go down here, and there's an eye icon. When I click on that, that'll hide that source, so I could hide all these topmost items. I could simply toggle that again to re-show those different items. Now let's say I'm all done positioning my video and the logo. I might want to lock those items so I don't disrupt their current position. So I've now locked those 3 items, and I can move my desktop around, and I don't have to worry about mistakenly clicking on my logo or the video because those are now locked in that position. Now that I've locked the position, this is one unit right here. So I have the logo, the video, the color source. I really view this as a group. Now I can click on the sources, and I'll press the Shift key to select these 3 items. So the logo, the video, and the border. I can now right click on this, and I could group the selected items. Let's try this. I'm going to call this group logo and video. Now I'll click on enter, and I can collapse this group so it helps clean up my list of sources, and this way I know when I select this item I can show that whole group, or I can hide the whole group, so it helps organize my sources a little bit better. My new scene is all together now, and at this point I can now start streaming, I can start recording, I can start my virtual camera, so I can basically go live with this. Now let's say that maybe I have my webcam up here, but then I want to hide it because maybe I want people to focus on the full screen and not my face. Well, over here on the left hand side, I can click on the other scene, and this will shift the scene back to just my full desktop. Now let's say I'm done explaining the whole desktop. I can now click on my scene, and that'll show me again here in the bottom right hand corner. Now one of the problems is when I click on these different scenes, it's a little bit of a hard cut. What if I want to have more of a transition? Well, that brings us to this category here called scene transitions. Right now it's set to simply cut, but I have all these other transitions that I can set. Let's pick the swipe transition instead. So I could select this, I'll click on OK for that name. Here I can preview what the transition looks like. That looks good. Let's click on OK. I now have a swipe transition. So when I'm streaming, when I'm recording, I can now click on the other scene, and now you see it swipes away. If I want to go back to my webcam image now, I can click on that scene, and once again that also swipes it away. So here I could choose from many different transitions, and I could customize the transitions to make my recording or my stream look better. Now just like before, I don't want to have to open up OBS to shift between my scenes. Instead, here too I can also set shortcut keys. If I go to the top left hand corner, once again let's click on File, click into Settings, and then go to Hotkeys. Within this list, I see my different scene names. Here's the desktop capture with webcam, and I see my scene. I can set a shortcut key to switch to this scene. For example, I'll set F2 to switch to the desktop with webcam, and then for my full desktop, I'll set that to Alt 3. Next, I'll click on apply and then OK. Back within the main screen here, now if I want to jump between scenes, I'll press Alt F3, that jumps back to my desktop, and Alt F2, and that jumps back to my scene with the webcam. So here too, I could set shortcut keys to kick off my recording, and I could set shortcut keys to switch my scenes. Now that we've looked at how you can seamlessly switch between scenes, I want to show you some additional functionality related to sources. Down here within sources, when you select one of your sources, you'll see some buttons that appear right up here. Here you could return to your properties, and you could also jump into filters. I'm going to select my webcam image, and then let's see what filters we have. Within filters, up in the top left-hand corner, I have audio and video filters, and then down below I have some effect filters. Let's first take a look at some of the audio filters. Here you have all sorts of different audio filters that you could apply, for instance, the gain, the limiter. One of the interesting ones is you have noise suppression. So let's say that you're streaming or you're recording in a louder environment. Maybe you have a dog barking, or maybe the landscapers are outside. You can use noise suppression to cut all that out. Down below, I also have effect filters. Let's click on that to see what we could do. I could apply different LUTs. I could use a chroma key. Let's say I have a green screen in back of me and I want to remove it. I could use a chroma key for that. I could correct the color. Here I could crop my video here too, and you could even set something up to scroll. So let's say you inserted text into your scene, you could have that scroll across your screen. So there are all sorts of different filters that you could play with. It's definitely worth some time looking in here and seeing what you can do. Along with being able to apply filters to individual sources, I could also transform a source. So what does that mean? Well, here down below, I'll click on the group that I created with the logo in the video. When I right click on this, there's the option for transform. With transform, I could rotate items, I could flip items, or I could also center them on the screen. Here, I'll click on center to screen, and here you see that my logo and webcam jumps to the center. I'll move it back to the corner, but here with transform, I could very quickly make changes to my different sources. We've been looking at many of the different ways you can take advantage of the power of OBS, but I also want to show you how you can make the experience your own. Now, so far we've been using the user interface as it comes out of the box. You can adjust things to meet your needs. For instance, I could click on controls and I could drag it out of the experience. Or maybe I want to put scene transitions over on the left-hand side. I can move these different items wherever I want. Now, let's say you move a bunch of things and you want to reset it. Well, you could simply right-click on an item and then click on Reset UI, and that'll return it back to the original state. Along with being able to customize the user interface, you can also set up multiple profiles. Up here, there's a menu for profiles. So what is a profile? Well, let's say you go into File Settings and you go through and you make a whole bunch of modifications to these settings. You can set up a profile to store all of those settings. So maybe you have one profile for streaming, and then you have a different profile with a different set of settings for recording. You can then very quickly jump back and forth between those profiles. Another way that you can customize the experience is using something called scene collections. And what is a scene collection? Well, the easiest way to describe it is it's a group of scenes. So just like a scene has multiple sources under it, a scene collection can have multiple scenes under it. So it's basically one level up from scenes. Probably the easiest way is to simply show. I'll click on scene collections and I'll jump to my scene collection that I use for my YouTube channel. So here you see I have an entirely new set of scenes and then sources under those scenes. If I want to jump back to my other scene collection, I can simply click here, and now you see the scenes that we created together. We've covered quite a bit of functionality today, but the last thing I want to touch on is how you can use studio mode. Over on the right hand side, there's an option called studio mode under the controls, and you could use this when you're streaming or when you're recording. Let's click into this to see what we can do. Within studio mode, you see a preview over on the left hand side, and then I see the program over on the right hand side. The easiest way to think of what program means is when you're streaming or when you're recording, this is what's being recorded or this is what's being streamed. Over on the left hand side, we see a preview. Now with the preview, I can move different items around. So I could click on my desktop, I could adjust the size. So maybe I want to modify things. Now anything I'm doing over on the left, that's not being recorded and it's not being streamed. So I can make adjustments over on the left, and let's say that, while I'm streaming, I want to change my view to look like this. I can then click on transition, and this now goes live out to my audience where I'm streaming or when I'm recording. Alright. Alright, well that was a quick look at how you can get started using OBS. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. To see more videos like this in the future, hit that subscribe button. If you want to see me cover any other topics, leave a comment down below and I'll add it to my list of videos to create. Alright, well that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you next time. Bye.
Video is the most powerful communication tool available today, and capturing high-quality video has never been easier. In almost all cases, the raw video needs to be altered, trimmed, adjusted, or edited, and this is a major roadblock for a lot of people. This course is designed to get you up and running with one of the most popular video editing applications out there. Hi, my name is Dave Bodie for Tuts Plus, and in this course, you will learn the basics of editing in Adobe's Premiere Pro. You will learn how to organize your files outside of Premiere, how to import your assets, and how to set up a project. You will also learn some editing essentials like marking the in and out points on clips, creating subclips, the basics of trimming in a timeline, adding cutaway shots, audio effects and video effects, adjusting the audio of your tracks, adding titles, and exporting your project. By the end of this course, you will have the skills you need to be able to take raw camera footage and turn that into something much more interesting. In the next lesson, you are going to learn about what you need to get started editing in Adobe Premiere Pro. In this lesson, you will learn what you need to get started editing in Premiere Pro. First, you're going to need to get Adobe Premiere Pro CC. Years ago, you could buy Premiere Pro as a standalone product, and it would be yours forever. Now, you have to use the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription-based payment model. Like it or not, it's here to stay. Getting Premiere Pro will run you about $20 USD per month. Or, if you want more apps, you can get everything Adobe makes for $50 USD per month. The upside of Premiere Pro CC is that it's frequently updated with new features and bug fixes. The next thing you will need is a computer to edit on. All of the new Adobe apps are 64-bit, so you will need a 64-bit operating system to run them. On PC, that means Windows 7 with Service Pack 1 64-bit or Windows 8 64-bit. On Mac, you need OS X 10.8, 10.9, or 10.10. For hardware, you're going to need a little bit of horsepower. You need an Intel Core 2 Duo or AMD Phenom 2 processor with 64-bit support on PC, and a multi-core Intel processor with 64-bit support on the Mac. 4 GB of RAM is the minimum requirement, but 8 GB is recommended. You need at least 4 GB of space on your hard disk for installation, and a 7200 RPM or faster drive is recommended. A 1280 by 800 pixel resolution display is the bare minimum, but you're definitely going to want more space than that. On a Mac, there isn't a sound card requirement, but on a PC, you need a sound card with the ASIO protocol or the Microsoft Windows driver model, but I think you should be fine with just about any sound card on PC. You also need QuickTime 7.6.6 software and an internet connection. The internet connection is required for registration and for the software to make sure that you have paid your monthly fee. I believe there is a 1-month grace period if something gets goofed up with your payment, but after that, the software stops working. Finally, if you want to use any of the GPU accelerated features, and you definitely do, you're going to need an Adobe certified GPU card with at least 1 GB of virtual RAM. Those are the basic requirements to get you going, but you will probably want more firepower at your disposal. CPU speeds will help with the real-time playback of your files and exporting your projects, so more cores and faster speeds will help. For RAM, more is always better. This is especially true if you are using Premiere with After Effects, Encore, Prelude, Media Encoder, or Photoshop simultaneously. All of these apps share the same memory pool, so if you have too little RAM, your performance will be crippled. If you want to use any of these apps at the same time, you probably want 16 gigabytes of RAM at the minimum. In my main workstation, I have 24 gigabytes of RAM, and in my backup workstation, I have 16. 3 years ago, when I built my main workstation, the Intel i970 6-core CPU and 24 gigabytes of RAM was the most I could stuff into my computer without jumping up the cost by 3 or 4 times. It was the sweet spot for performance and price, so that's what I went with. 6 months later, this was a different story, but that's how these things work. If you need a system for right now, it doesn't really matter what's coming down the pipe in a few months. For hard drives, it's probably best to have at least 2. One for your operating system and apps, and the other to put your project files, media, preview files, and exports on. As you add additional drives, you can start moving things around to optimize your data flow. For example, if you had 3 drives, you might want to put your OS and apps on the first, media and project files on the second, and preview files, media cache, and exports on the third. This way, when you go to export your projects, you will be pulling the assets from one drive and writing the rendered video files to another, which will speed things up. SSDs are super fast and great to have, but you might want to reserve those for areas where you need the most speed, like your main OS drive and your media cache drive. If you can put your media assets on an SSD, that would be even faster, but video media is gigantic, and that isn't always an option. Just to give you an example, the media files for this course that you are watching right now are somewhere around 170 gigabytes. Once you get a few projects under your belt, the storage of your media assets starts to become an important thing to manage. If you edit video long enough, you're going to have to start juggling projects from internal to external storage. But this can be as simple as using a hard drive dock and a bunch of drives. To take advantage of some of the recent speed improvements in Premiere, you should also have a GPU that will work with Premiere's GPU accelerated features. They have a list of approved cards which covers a lot of popular cards, but some cards that are not on the list will also work. For example, I have an NVIDIA 970 GTX, which isn't on the list, and it works just fine. Like I mentioned earlier, the basic monitor requirement is super low, and you will probably want to have at least one 1920 by 1080 or higher monitor. 2 or 3 monitors would be even better so that you can spread out your panels and have more space to work. You might also want to consider a monitor calibration tool as well. This is critical when you start doing color correction because you need to know that your monitor is showing you the proper colors, brightness, and contrast. A basic calibration device starts at around $100 USD, and if you have multiple monitors and you want them to match, look for a unit that has that feature as well. Another important aspect of editing is audio. It isn't listed anywhere in the requirements, but you should have a decent pair of audio monitors and headphones to use when you're editing. Making changes to the audio will require a higher level of speaker quality than you will get with your computer speakers. The PreSonus Aris E5 or the Yamaha HS5 is a good place to start with audio monitors. For headphones, you might want to check out the Sennheiser HD280 Pro, Sony MDR7506, or a super inexpensive option is the Monoprice 8323, which are shockingly good for the price. Whatever hardware you choose, I would recommend aiming for a little bit better than you think you might need. As cameras get better, you're going to need to deal with higher resolutions and higher bitrate codecs. These will put a lot more strain on your system, and a little extra firepower will go a long way to easing that transition. Now that you understand what you need to get started in Premiere Pro, you are ready to learn about file organization, which is coming up next. Before you start pulling your footage into Premiere, it would be smart to have your files organized first. This is a critical step with some camera systems because if you get the folder structure wrong, your footage won't work properly. In this lesson, you will learn how to do some basic file organization. You're looking at a folder that contains assets for an instructional course that I'm putting together on how to shoot and produce an instructional video. And I wanted to show you this to just give you a general idea of what you might want to think about when you're organizing your files. I have a collection of different types of media in this folder here. You see I have some voiceovers, which are WAV files, and I recorded that in an application called Reaper. So there's a lot of Reaper backup files and a Reaper project file in here. I did some screen recordings, and so I have those uncompressed AVI files in a folder. I had some test photos that I shot. I have some docs and a few title graphics here that I threw in a folder just to keep it a little more organized. I have a folder with B-roll shots in here, which I went through and changed the file names so that I could find them more easily if I want to use any of these shots in another project. Then I have all the footage files from the cameras that were used to shoot this project. Now, the main portion of this project is in this demo shoot folder here. And if I go into here, you can see I have it broken down by the type of camera that was shot. So a Canon 7D, a Canon C100, and a GoPro 4. And so you'll see I have my files in here. Most of these are video files, although I think I may have accidentally shot one photo with the lens cap on there. But I just throw everything right into the folder. Then I have a C100 folder, and there's two folders in here because I used two Canon C100s to shoot this project. And with some cameras, it's very important that you keep the folder structure exactly the same as how the camera originally created it. Because if you don't, importing those into your video editor can really screw things up. This Canon C100 is one of those cameras. So if I drill down into one of these folders, you'll see that there's many subfolders in here, and it has this kind of strange folder structure. The video files are actually in this streams folder here. But if I were to take the video files out of this folder and put them in a folder called DaveCam C100, they would not import into Adobe Premiere properly. Because there are some other files in here which will tell Premiere that some of these files are actually a continuous recording, even though they're stored as separate files. This is something we're going to talk about more in an upcoming lesson, but I did want to go over it with you a little bit first. For example, I just stuck this card from my camera into my card reader, and when I open it up to view the files, you're going to see that same weird folder structure here. And all of the video files are in this streams folder. But when I'm taking this footage off of the card, what I do is grab this private folder and I put that inside another folder, just like I did with this other folder here. You can see I've organized it C100, DaveCam, and then I put that entire folder right inside here. I did the same thing with this other camera here. With AndrewCam, you see it says private, AVC HD, and then the video files are actually down here in the streams folder. It's critical for the files that are shot with this Canon C100, and I think a lot of the other cameras that shoot to AVC HD format, and possibly some other codecs, that you keep the file structure and the folder structure intact right from the memory card. I'll just jump back here and show you. I have a GoPro folder here, and I just threw all of the video files right from the card in this folder. I have some audio files that were recorded from an iPhone, and all of that is part of this demo shoot here, so I have all of that organized accordingly. I have a few other folders here, conclusion and main teaching and introduction. These contain footage that's right from the card, so you'll see the same exact folder structure on here, and all the video assets are right in the streams folder again. This is generally how I like to organize the projects that I shoot or the projects that I'm working on. Occasionally, if I have kind of general assets for projects, if I have music assets or photo assets, I'll put those in their own folder. So for example, I have a stock photos folder, and inside here I have a bunch of stock photos. Most of them are photos that I have shot, and then I try and name the files in such a way that I can find them and use them, and then I can use them on several different projects. I do the same thing for audio. I have a big giant audio folder, and in that folder I have sound effects, I have stock music, I have recordings that I've made, and all kinds of stuff. And that's handy to have because that's not located in a project folder here with kind of project-specific assets. So I can search those assets and use those assets on different projects, and it's a little bit more convenient for me to work that way. So when I'm working on a project that has a lot of different assets from cameras and other sources, I like to put all of that into one big folder and get it organized in the way that makes the most sense to me. And that way, as soon as I get all of the assets from all the cameras and all the other sources, I can take my folder here and I can back that up to another drive. And that way, when I start editing, if something happens to the drive that I have the assets on, I have a backup with all the right folder structure, and I have all the files located exactly where I need them so that it's a very seamless process to use the other drive and the project file that I'm working on to start editing right away, and there's no downtime. So make sure you're organizing your files and you're keeping things nice and tidy on your computer. And remember, if you're dealing with footage from a camera, you may need to keep the folder structure intact when you pull those files on your machine. Otherwise, they're not going to work properly once you get them inside of Adobe Premiere. So now that you have a basic understanding of how to organize your files, you're ready to go on to the next lesson, where you're going to get a quick tour of Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm sure you want to get editing right away, but it would be good to learn about the general layout of Premiere Pro. This will help you follow along as you move through this course. So let's get started with the essentials. I just opened up Premiere Pro, and by default, it starts with a little welcome pop-up here, which shows you your recent items. It gives you an option to open project. You can create a new project. You can learn and get started, or you can just exit the program. You also have a little tick box here to show the welcome at startup, and you can turn that off if you want. I want to go over some of the interface elements with you, and to do that, you're going to need to open up the same project that I'm using, and that's called Introduction to Video Editing in Adobe Premiere CC Quick Tour. I have it listed right here in my recent items because I've already had this project open, but for you, you're probably going to have to choose Open and then navigate to wherever you have it located. So when you open up your project in Premiere Pro, it should look something like this. And if it doesn't, come up here to Window, Workspace, choose Editing, and then go to Window, Workspace, Reset Current Workspace. And what this will do is it'll reset the position of all the panels and all the windows so that it looks just like this. First, let's go over the menu. You see we have File, Edit, Clip, Sequence, Marker, Title, Window, and Help. A lot of these menu items and features in the menu are redundant and can be performed by pressing a button in Premiere's interface, using a keyboard shortcut, or with a different context menu in one of the panels. But the menu is a good resource to use if you're trying to do something in Premiere and you can't quite figure it out. You can kind of look through the menu and see if the action or the function you're looking for is in there. The window menu gives you access to all of the panels in Premiere's interface, and you'll find that you'll need to go in here from time to time to make some of these panels visible. Now there's one thing specifically I wanted to draw your attention to in the menu, and that's under Edit, Preferences, Autosave. This Preferences dialog contains all of the main preferences in Premiere that you may want to set. You have General, Appearance, Audio, Audio Hardware, but really important, I think, is the Autosave. Autosave, I think, is a really important preference to check on, and you can see that it's checked on right here, so that in case anything happens with your project, you won't lose your work. You can see I have it checked on right here. I have it set to automatically save every 5 minutes, and maximum project versions is set to 10. There's also an option to save backup project to Creative Cloud if you are a Creative Cloud user. There may be a few more preferences that we check back with later in this course, but autosave is the only one that I'm really concerned with right now. You can see the main interface here is broken up into panels, and panels are organized in the main application window in an arrangement called a workspace, which you saw in the beginning of this lesson where I came in and I made sure it was set to editing, and then I reset the current workspace. There are a few preset workspaces, which is basically an arrangement of these windows. There's assembly, audio, color correction. I created these two, dual monitor and edit with reference monitor. And once you arrange the windows how you like, if you want to save that, it's pretty easy to do. You just select new workspace and then you name it, and then it'll be available to you right up here anytime you want to use that particular workspace. I have one that's specifically set for using dual monitors, and what that does is it takes some of the windows and it pushes those out to a second monitor so I can maximize my workspace. Now, like I mentioned, the workspace is customizable, so these panels are all repositionable, and the other panels will resize to fit the workspace. You can see we can make any of these bigger or smaller just by grabbing and dragging in between the panels. You can also take the panels and move them around. So if I click up here and drag, and I pull this over here, you can see I'm getting these little purple indicators here. And that's letting me know that I can dock this window in all of these locations. So if I put the window over here, now this big frame up here contains a bunch of tabs, and the program monitor, which is the panel that I just moved, is now sharing this frame with metadata, audio clip mixer, effect controls, and the source monitor. I can also dock it to the side. You can see there's little trapezoids here. And what that will do is kind of split the frame into two. So now I have a frame over here, or I can pull things in and I can create tabs over here. Or I can dock this wherever I would like. You can also take and just drag outside the application window, just like I just did there. It just went off the screen a little bit. But that will make a new window for you as well. So if you are using dual monitors, or even triple monitors or quadruple monitors, you can drag these panels and then you can pull in other panels and create your own workspace to fill up all your monitor space.
There's a safe room in it.
I'll just reset this here. And again, if I really screwed this up, you know, and I really messed up the look of this and I wanted to get back to that default, super easy. I just reset the current workspace and it goes right back to this default. Now, like I mentioned before, there are context menus in each one of these panels. Each panel will have a little menu here for closing the panel group, and so on. But if you right-click in the panel, it'll bring up a menu with all kinds of different features. Additionally, there's also a little wrench icon here, which also has menu items as well. Now, as you see as I click around the interface, the panel that I'm currently selecting is highlighted blue. And this is important because some of the menu items up here are not available if you have the wrong panel selected. You see, I don't have anything available in the clip menu here because I don't have a clip selected. I'm currently selected on this tools panel here, and so I don't have any of these menu items. So it is important that you select the right window and also you have the right item selected. So even if I'm in the timeline panel here, if I don't have a clip selected, I still don't have any options here in the clip menu. I do have options here when I'm in the sequence window, but if I'm over here in the info window, I can't access my sequence settings because I don't have a sequence selected. As soon as I select something like the program monitor, now the program monitor is displaying the current sequence that I'm working on, and now I can go in and find my sequence settings. So let's go over some of the panels that you're going to be using the most. The program monitor is a panel that plays back the sequence of clips that you are assembling. So basically, the program monitor is the display of your timeline panel, or the sequence that you are currently working on. Down here, this is the timeline panel, and this is where you work on your sequences. This panel right here is called the source monitor, and this plays back individual clips, and you can use the source monitor to prepare your clips before you add them to your sequence in the timeline window here. Down here, let me make a little bit of space. This is the project panel. You can see it says right here, project, and then it gives you the name of this project. The project panel contains all of the assets you're going to use for your project, and it's where you can organize those assets so that they are easy to find. Way over here is the audio level meter panel, and this duplicates the display of the audio track mixer's master meters. That was a lot of words right there. So basically, this is an audio meter, and if I play this clip here,
because we are making larger cookies, you'll want to take the low and slow approach.
this is not showing me the meter of this track, it's showing me the master meter. Now, another panel that you're going to use quite often is right up here, and that's the effects controls panel. Right now, you don't see anything in here until I select a clip. And now you can see I have some parameters here that I can adjust. Now, I haven't added any effects on this clip, but there are a few default parameters here. If I add an effect to this from the effects panel, you will see the effects listed here, and you can change the parameters of those effects. And if I did want to add an effect to this, what I would do is come down to this frame right here, and you see I have this little scroll bar right at the top there because this frame isn't big enough to display all of these panels or all of these tabs. And if I click right here, you will see the effects panel. Now the effects panel contains all of the audio and the video effects contained in Premiere. It's where you'll find all of the basic native effects that ship with Premiere Pro, and there are quite a few. And it's also where you'll find any third-party effects which you may buy for Premiere Pro. Now let me go over some of the other panels here that are brought up by default. You have your media browser panel here, and this is a way that you can navigate your computer file system and pull in and import your clips and other assets into Premiere. This is going to become important in an upcoming lesson when we look at specific file types for certain camera systems. You have your info panel here, and if I click on this clip, you can see some info listed about this clip. There's a markers panel here, so if I drop a marker in here, I can add some notes about this marker right here. And then there's the history panel, and this shows you what you've done so far in your project. If I jump up to this frame up here, you have an audio clip mixer, and this is a way that you can change the audio levels for individual clips. And then there is the metadata panel up here, which you can see all the metadata listed for this clip. There's certainly a lot more to know about these interfaces and menus, but this is the basic information that you need to know in order to move on with this course. In the next chapter of the course, you're going to learn about setting up a project, and that's going to start with importing assets. So check that out coming up next. The first step in editing is getting your footage and other assets imported into Premiere. In this video, you will learn a few ways to get it done. So let's start by going up to File, New, Project, so we can start fresh. And we'll call this Cheryl Cookie Instructional. Now, when you are creating a new project, you will see you'll have a lot of options here, location where you want this project to be saved, and this is just the project file, not the assets that you are going to import into your project. These other options you can pretty much leave at their defaults, and then press OK. So let's look at how to import assets into Premiere, and we can do this in a few ways. If we jump over to the project panel here, you can see that it says Import Media to start, and if you double click right in here, it brings up a window here, and then I can navigate to where I have the assets for this particular project located. And for you, you're going to be looking for a downloaded folder called Cheryl Cookie Instructional Assets. For me, that's located on my X drive under a folder called Cheryl Cookie Instructional, and then here I have my Cheryl Cookie Instructional Assets. If I go into this folder, I have two subfolders. One is called Wide, and here I have a collection of the wide shots that we're going to be working on. And then I have another folder called Cutaway, which has the collection of the cutaway shots that we'll be using as well. So I can select individual files to import. I can select a single file here. I can lasso several files and import them all. And I can also import a folder. You can see there's an import folder option right down here. So I can actually back up and choose this folder, which contains the two subfolders in it, and then import this folder into Premiere. And now I have a representation of that same file structure in Premiere, which is a really handy way to go about importing your assets. Now I don't have to do as much organization inside of Premiere. And you can see if I drill down in these folders, I have all the files that I need, exactly how I organize them. Now additionally, you can also just drag files right into Premiere. So if I wanted to grab an additional file, I could do that. I could search for a file here. I'm going to look for an arrow graphic that I created, and I could take that and just drag that right into Premiere. And if I jump back to Premiere, because this is a Photoshop file, it's going to ask me if I want to import this merging all the layers together, or I have some other options here. I'm just going to choose Merge Layers. And now I have that asset in here as well. So you can drag items into the project panel. You can also drag items into a sequence once you've created one. So this way of importing files works well for a lot of different files, for graphics, for audio, for some video clips if they're shorter. For some camera systems though, particularly cameras that shoot in an AV-HD format, they store the files in a file structure, which we looked at in a previous lesson. In importing those raw files, will not get you the result that you're looking for. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. This is a folder of a concert that I shot, and you'll see there are 10 files in here. But I actually only pressed the record button once and I let it run for, I don't know, 2 hours or so. You see, as I click around on these clips, they all say they're about 11 minutes, 12 seconds long. And that's really not how I want to use these clips, because if I import these into Premiere by just dragging them into Premiere, there's going to be a very small break in between these clips when I put these on a sequence, and that's going to break the flow. It basically drops a frame and the audio gets kind of glitched out a little bit. So this is not the way you want to import these MTS